Welcome to the Daily Dharma, a gentle podcast where we read a philosophical story every week and reflect on how it relates to everyday life. Our focus is to use Buddhist philosophy to understand the complexity of modern life and find achievable and accessible pathways to peace. Hi everyone, welcome to the Daily Dharma. In this episode, we're going to be talking about what it means to reframe our identity and what it could look like in practice. The story that we'll be reflecting on this theme is called Kenzo, and it comes from the book Tiger, Mouse, Strawberry by Yuki Senda. Here is how the story goes. Once upon a time, there was a Zen master who lived in the city of Kyoto. He was the head of the local temple, and the people of Kyoto held him in very high esteem. In addition to an extraordinary sense of justice, he was the bearer of great wisdom. So when a high official named Kenzo was appointed as Kyoto's city mayor, he wanted to meet the famous Zen master. He had already heard countless amazing stories about him. So he decided to go to the temple, and upon arrival was greeted by one of the Zen master's acolytes. To identify himself, the high official handed his business card to the acolyte with a request to meet the master. The acolyte accepted it and asked him to take a seat. Then he disappeared behind a door. Shortly after, the acolyte approached the master and said, "Someone has come to see you." "Who is it?" the master asked curiously. The acolyte handed him the business card. The master took it and read it. Kenzo, senior official of Kyoto. As soon as the master read the card, he threw it away in exasperation. And while doing so, he said, "I have nothing to do with this man. Please tell him to leave immediately." The acolyte apologetically picked up the card and returned it to the high official, who was still waiting in the lobby of the temple. "I'm so sorry, sir, but the master doesn't want to see you," the servant said sympathetically as he handed the card back to him. The high-ranking officer was stunned. He just couldn't believe that this was happening. But when he took the card and looked at it, he realized his mistake. So he decided to take a pencil from his pocket and scratched something off his business card. Then he returned the card to the acolyte and immediately asked them, "Now, with this updated card, would you be able to request the audience with the master one last time?" The acolyte went back to the master, and he handed him the business card again, and immediately told him someone was asking to speak with him. The master grabbed it and read it carefully. Now, the business card simply read, Kenzo. The title of high official had been crossed out. It was only then that the master's eyes lit up as he realized this and said to his acolyte, "Oh, Kenzo. Yes, I'd love to see him. Send him in, please." I think this story is so interesting because, first of all, the whole concept of a business card in a time that took place hundreds of years ago is just fascinating. But aside from that, the humility of Kenzo, who had just been elected, this high official, mayor of the city, to realize in that moment what was happening is quite incredible. And I think those moments of realizing, oh, the identity, perhaps the title, the person, the essentially like the structure of person I have been this whole time. Like, that structure is no longer serving me. Even that alone is a really difficult conclusion to come to, because I think just the way that we are socialized, and also the way that the people that know us prefer, it's that we don't change, that we stay familiar and essentially keep to the familiar structure and shape of personality, habits, lifestyle that is accessible to those immediately closest to us. And this is not necessarily always a bad thing. If it's good, healthy, and also self-nurturing habits, these are good things to essentially have people to hold us accountable to, because they essentially help perpetuate that structure and identity within ourselves. But I think sometimes where this starts to become really difficult is when life pushes us in ways where we realize that the way we're thinking about things, the way we do things, the way we see things, approach things, it's not working. And I think we've all been in that position where we just keep hitting a wall, and it feels as though all the tools that we've been given throughout life are just not helping us. It's not getting us to a place where things are feeling or even have the hope of becoming better. And I think sometimes that is a sign that the shape in which and that's kind of like another word for identity, the shape in which we've decided to inhabit needs to morph a little bit. It needs to change. And I think this story, like in this story, the Kenzo, the high official, he's elected, he has this title he's very proud of. But in that moment where he comes to the temple, in a moment of vulnerability, where he is maybe afraid, anxious, uncertain about whether or not he's going to deliver on the promises that he essentially shared with the members of his city. Perhaps he's just feeling as though maybe I'm not sure how to be a high official here. In that moment where he comes to the Zen master to ask for wisdom, he has to realize that in the title of high official, that's not really the title of someone who is willing and ready to open to fresh ideas and conversation. Rather, that's the title of someone who has perhaps achieved mastery and has no business really having a conversation with a Zen master. But in simply being Kenzo, just a man, just a person, another being wandering on the path of life, he becomes a natural conversation partner for the Zen master. Because Kenzo is a man who, based on the business card and what the Zen master read into it, is capable of that greater questioning, of change, of fitting into perhaps a different mold, or is open to doing so, is less rigid in the views that he holds about who he is and who he wants to be. Kenzo is a man who is open to change, whereas, and I think this is what the Zen master is reading into, the high official Kenzo is not. And even though it just seems like two words in front of a name, if we really examine all the labels or the personality traits we've identified within ourselves, and we also label ourselves with, it could be actually quite startling the ways in which they have such a hold on us. Because it's not just that they have meaning, and we are reinforcing that meaning within ourselves every time we think about it, but that meaning has been added on and built upon by those around us. And every time we challenge it or show something differently, if we get a positive reaction, good. That's a sign that it's okay, it's safe to change. But a negative reaction, it feels not good at all. Because now there's this pressure to revert back to who we used to be in order to help those around us and those we really love feel comfortable. And I think ultimately, shifting our identities, reframing who we are, is about finding that comfortable but also growth centered balance between retaining what is so good about what we've collected, about the identity that we've built over the years, but also being able to understand and reframe what perhaps needs to change. And for some of us, it's our attitude towards problems. For others, it's how we solve certain problems, or rather, how we face conflicts with others. But I think no matter what, if we're able to be brave enough to look at ourselves, be kind to ourselves in this process, and gently realize, maybe there is something that I'm willing to change. Maybe there is a part of my identity as a person that I've built that could use a little bit of shifting. I think that alone is really the stepping stone to reframing our identity in order to better meet the challenges and the rigors of life as it ebbs and flows and ultimately changes drastically decade after decade. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'm very happy to be posting again on Sunday. And thank you for being patient with me. If you have any episode requests, any ideas or thoughts you'd like to share with me, please email me anytime at dailydharmapodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. And may you have a beautiful, safe, and joyful week ahead of you. Until next week.